Hi there, my friends. So we are here to look at a deck that is new to me. It's not brand new, but this is the New Earth Tarot deck and handbook, co-created by Kate Silver and Charlene DeLong, and then with the guidebook or handbook by Kate Silver. So this deck originally came out in 2012, it sounds like, and then the second edition came out in 2016, but I only just recently heard of it, and I don't have any round decks, so I thought this would be an interesting one to take a look at. So this isn't an unboxing. I have looked at it already, and looked at the guidebook and everything, but I thought it would be just interesting to take a look at it together, and what I haven't done is shuffled it or laid it out, so I thought that would be something interesting that we could do together. So here's the deck box. It's a large box, so the book fits in it, and it's really nicely put together. It's a really sturdy box. The thing I would say about it is that if you can see here, the cards sort of slip in down at the bottom with the book. Not an ideal, for me, way to pack, but I would say that there's not a whole lot of give in there, so that if you have the book in the box, there probably won't be much damage if you're not sort of jostling it around too much. But I still generally prefer, something a little more tailored to the deck itself. Now, I didn't read the whole guidebook. I generally don't, but I did want to see what the guidebook says. And I'll say, for a new reader, I think it gives you a good introduction. It goes through the numerology of tarot, or at least this reader and artist's impressions of the numbers. Mine differ, of course. There are many systems, and I get asked this occasionally. There's not really any one path. There are commonalities, and you draw on them, but I think the main thing is, if you're going to work with the numbers in tarot, that you do some research, find a mix of number descriptions that are balanced and make sense for you, and that you just stick to that. There's no real one way to do it. The right way to do it is the way that makes sense, and that you are relatively consistent with it. But the reason why I do think the guidebook is nice, in addition to the numerology, which I think is helpful, is that the author does describe the card image. And that's always interesting to me when a deck is inspired by Rider-Waite-Smith but isn't necessarily entirely in line with it. It's nice to have the artist or the creator's interpretation of what's going on in the image. Even if you don't necessarily see it that way, it's a nice thing. And this is also a really nicely produced book. In a way, it's almost a little bit better quality than the deck itself. It's nice glossy paper. It's got like a nice weight to it, which I think is really nice. And so the cards all have quotes associated with them, or descriptions of what's going on. The courts are child, adolescent, diviner, and sage, instead of page, knight, king, and queen. So, nice guidebook. I probably won't read the whole thing. I rarely do, but I always like to, when I know I'm going to show a deck on the channel, if there is a guidebook, I like to have a sense of what the guidebook is. If someone new stumbles along and wants to know whether the guidebook is a good introduction, I think this one is. There are some spreads in the back. So, and it does something, again, that I like when deck creators do, which is it describes the image. Doesn't necessarily describe why things are where they are, but you at least have a sense of what the intent of the author is. So let's take a look at the cards. Now, like I said, I don't have any round decks. This is the first one. The backs are cute, but I will say, cute still sounds so dismissive. The backs are I like the colors. I like the richness of them. It says second edition on the back, which I really wish it did not. I really do not like writing on the backs of cards. That's not an uncommon impression, but it's there. I really wish people wouldn't do that. I mean, it's bad enough for me when it's the name of the deck, but when it's like just something as sort of innocuous as what edition it is. That kind of drives me nuts. And then there's a copyright on the side. Copyrights don't really bother me much, especially when they're independently published, because, you know, as an author, it is scary to put your work out there in the world, and not everyone is as ethical as others. So I'm just going to walk through the deck really quickly. I'll shuffle it and lay it out. Now, the guidebook does not really get into the circle thing, the round deck, much. She references that she was introduced to her co-creator, to the mother piece, which is, of course, famously a round deck. And the thing that I have learned about round decks mostly comes from Veronica Jude and her talking about how she reads based on where the card seems to be pointing. But what this guidebook does is it gives you upright and inverted, so you get an upright and reversed meaning. Now, if I remember correctly, and I probably should have gone back and watched, Veronica Jude talks about how if the card is sort of pointing backward to the left, the energy is being misdirected. If it's upside down, it's in reverse. If it's upright, it's going the right way, or it's active. And then if it's facing the right, if the top is facing the right, then you're moving forward. I probably should have watched. I didn't even think to do it. What else? Cardstock is actually really nice. It's thin. It's really thin. That never really bothers me much because it does tend to shuffle well. I don't know that that's going to matter much for... I don't know if it's even possible to riffle shuffle around deck, but we'll find out. The cutting is a little rough, I will say, but again, for all this, I mean, it's a really nicely produced deck. The box is probably the most sturdy piece of the whole puzzle. You know, indie decks they tend to have a little bit more of an indie quality to them, I guess is a way to say it. So anyway, let's take a look at the cards. So here's the Fool. The numbering is Marseille inspired, so Justice is 8 and Strength is 11. Other than that, things are pretty standard. And then there's 2 extra cards. There's an old version of the 9 of Swords, as I understand it, and then a different title for the Star card. And I'll show you both of those. But the Star card is the same. So here's the Magician. Now, what drew me to the deck when I saw it on Instagram was the rich, really handmade quality of the art. Here's the High Priestess. And let me just give you a sample of what it sounds like in the guidebook. I won't read the whole thing, but I'll give you a sense of what the guidebook says. So the High Priestess serenely sits on her throne of gold. She's the ultimate in receptivity. She waits to answer those questions that come to her. She does not provoke. Her throne is the mystery of Isis, mother of Egypt, goddess of mystery and light. The back of the throne is the full moon that lights the High Priestess's insight into life, and the waning moon on her belt lights her insight into healing. Snakes representing sexuality and eternity entwine the legs of her throne. The stars in the night sky remind us of the presence of the deity and the vortices of energy that shine divine influence upon our planet. She wears a cape of purple blue, which regally protects her. She delves deeply into the unconscious. So you get a sense of, you know, the artists, creators have put thought into what everything in the picture is there for. Here's the Empress. There's the Emperor. The Hierophant. It looks, I did see this yesterday, it looks like he's carrying someone's head in his hand, which I would imagine means something. Let's see what that says. Oh, it's a mask. In this card, the Hierophant holds a mask of the Emperor. This indicates another pitfall for him, the possible urge to take both the power of his spiritual position as well as the power of the Emperor's material position as his own. So, that is interesting. Here's the Lovers. Triumph. Instead of the Chariot. Here is Justice. This is the wise one in place of the hermit. The Wheel of Fortune. Strength at 11 again. The Hanged One. Is Death. This is Temperance, a really unique individual iteration of Temperance. This is actually a sword being forged in fire and water and then used and cleaned. So I think that's really interesting impression. Here's the Devil. Now with these sort of quartered cards, like 15 and 14, you could use that as a guide in many ways. To, you know, if the card is sort of positioned this way and this sort of jail is at the top, then you could use that as the dominant energy for the card if you wanted to. There's the Tower. Here's the Star. The Moon. The Sun. Judgment. And then instead of the world, we have all and everything. So we get into now the suits. So here's the Ace of Wands, the Two of Wands, the Three. So the suits are not straight up Rider-Waite-Smith. They do verge, and you know, let's for example just sort of look at how the artists or the creators would describe this. So the Three of Wands is the one we just looked at. So this is one that's very different from traditional Rider-Waite-Smith. So the Three of Wands, Sun in Aries, self-confidence, inner passion, creative and destructive power, awakening sexuality. The Three of Flames, also found on the Empress card, form the energy of the Three of Wands card. Creativity, imagination, and joyful expression. Self-confidence blooms as the spirit connects deeply to the physical, emotional, and mental bodies of the individual. Here there is a double-edged sword. If the woman on the card cannot surrender to this energy, it will burn her up. If she allows the energy to flow through her, then she will have creative power and responsibility of unfathomed depth at her fingertips. So, not straight up Rider-Waite-Smith, which, you know, I'm always interested in because I've got decks that do that. I really like this card a lot. The changes are always what's interesting to me. Now, for the fives, even in this book, tend to be a little disruptive and conflicting. But this card doesn't necessarily say that. So here, this says 5 is the number of manifestation, the ability to bring newness into the world. In the Five of Wands, this manifestation is in the realm of vitality and spirit. The Buddha sits at the center of the card, deeply relaxed and deeply aware. So you can see it's not Rider-Waite-Smith in any way. It also deviates a bit from 5, you know, numerologically, as even the book itself describes 5. Let me see if I can get there quickly. Motion, instability, opportunity for change, learning to handle freedom, difficult but deep learning, manifestation. So this card seems to focus more on the manifestation and less on the other parts of 5 that she describes. 6 of Wands. It's the 7. 8. And then here we have the 9. And the 10. So again, the courts are child, adolescent, diviner, and sage. So here's the Child of Wands, the adolescent, the woman, and the man. Oh, I thought it was diviner and sage. Where did I get that from? That must be from another deck I was looking at. Here's the swords. One of swords, ace of swords. Here's the two of swords. The three. Now here's a really cool reinterpretation of that pierced heart energy that we usually see. I like that. So the four, the five, the six, seven. This has a very Icarus and Daedalus feel to it, which I like because I'm a mythology fan, but it's also really interesting. There's consequences to the Icarus and Daedalus story in this, you know, this person flying too close to the sun. Here's the Eight of Swords, the Nine. Now there's another Nine of Swords that I think was the original, and it looks like that, so you have that as an option too. And then the 10. There's the Child of Swords, the Adolescent, the Woman, and the Man. And then here we have Cups. Here's the Ace of Cups, Two of Cups, Three of Cups, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So again, not very Rider-Waite-Smith. There's the 9. And so I would say if this is a deck for someone new, if they're really invested in learning the Rider-Waite-Smith system, this is probably going to be a little confusing for them. If the person is used to reading just the images and is comfortable with reading the pictures, then that may work. These are not the most active descriptive pictures. Many of them have more of a sense of symbolism and energy than scenes, and so for a new reader that may be a little bit of a struggle. Here's the Child of Cups, the Adolescent, the Man, and the Woman. And then finally, the suit of pentacles or coins is mirrors here. So here's the Ace of Mirrors, the Two of Mirrors, the 3, the 4, the 5, 6, 7, 8. I remember seeing in the book that this is about Earth stewardship. 9, 10, and then here's the Child, the Adolescent, the Man, and the Woman. All right. Oh, and then the other card here is the Star. It's a different name for the Star card, the Way Shower, which actually is interesting because I do tend often to read the Star as a card of direction. So I've never shuffled around deck. Let's see what that experience is like. So I don't imagine there's any way. Maybe there is. Oh yeah, you can riffle shuffle. I really wish the back did not say second edition on it. That makes me so crazy. Just put it on the box. Why? The cards do sort of it's not like a stickiness, it's like a static quality. So they do actually, riffle shuffling is a little bit more likely to produce a mix than overhand. I imagined this would actually be easier to overhand. Yeah, they want to stay together in an interesting way when you overhand. All right. So I think with a round deck, having never used one before, I likely wouldn't do a fairly large spread, which I'm known for. But I would probably do a 3 card. In the book, the Celtic cross is there, which could be interesting too. I think it might take a while. So here's the 8 of Wands and the Ace of Cups and the Adolescent. The 8 of Wands is sort of pointed this way to the left. It's not a sharp turn to the left, but it's a little bit, so it may suggest that the 8 of Wands energy is a little restricted and a little bit held back. And so the forward motion that we usually suggest with the 8 of Wands is slowed a bit. Somehow the fire isn't there to get things moving forward. And it may be because I associate 8 with work, with effort, with vocation and labor. The fire isn't there, and so the passion for the project is a little diminished. But the Ace of Cups and the Adolescent of Swords are both pointed pretty sharply to the right, which we could read as a fast forward motion, a forward motion. And so the Ace of Cups may suggest they're actually feeling something a little bit new, and this old project may be on the back burner because they really want to go out into the world and start learning something new. And then in this case, they might add another card and say, well, what is that thing? And it's the Hierophant. And so they really want to start learning something new about their history, their tradition, their place in the structure of the world, for example. So that reads nicely. Let's see, do another one. I really love orange and blue together, so it's one thing that I really would like to say about the back. You can't quite see that it says second edition when you're shuffling, and I just really hate that it does say that. Why? All right, so this Ace of Mirrors is pointed much more sharply to the left, so we could say that this is really restricted. This 10 of Swords is straight up and down, so that's in an active space. And then this one is pointed really sharply to the right, so that's really moving forward. So there's like a new life lesson that's being held back or being restricted, probably by distraction with some sort of feigned innocence. So there's a distraction with arrested development with the Child of Cups, that and that arrested development is really aggressive. So there's a real distraction with wanting to be innocent and be young and avoid the lesson, avoid the new revelation that's coming in life. And so we might draw more and say, why? I see the Man and Woman of Cups as parents and the High Priestess. Mommy and Daddy have really protected you from having to learn anything and know anything. And you got to grow up because you're holding yourself back. So I like that. That's fun. Let's do one more. There is like a nice intuitive thing there. Whoops. Yeah, it really weirdly does not overshuffle as well as I thought it was. I thought it would be much easier to overhand than riffle, but the cardstock likes to stay with itself. There's like a magnetic quality to it. So this is definitely a riffle shuffler, which is nice because I actually prefer to riffle shuffle, and it's not hard to do. So let's see. All right, so the Man of Swords pointed to the left, really restricted. Here we have the Adolescent of Wands a little bit to the left, but mostly upright. And then this, the Hanged Man, or the Hanged One, almost entirely upside down, but pointed a little bit to the left, to the right rather. So the Man of Swords, so this, the mastery of intellect is being really held back by the Adolescent of Wands. I would say that this is someone who wants to go out and party and feel good, and so they're stopping themselves from reaching their full intellectual potential. And again, the Hanged Man reversed, or the Hanged One reversed, speaks to me of arrested development in a way. Now, I don't really read reversals in tarot, so it's interesting to consider that here, but there's a stasis to this, and so you're resisting reaching the full mastery of your mind because you want to play with fire, and there's consequences for that. And the consequence is that you're staying in a state of arrested development. So that's really cool. I like this a lot. I think there are other round decks that I've wanted to get over the years, and that I just haven't for various reasons. I feel like the Mother Piece feels like a beautiful deck that's very specifically for and about women. And the Circle of Life is another one that I've liked. But I don't. I've been told by people who know me that it's probably a deck I wouldn't use, essentially. So this is the first one that I found and reached for, and I like the idea of the directionality of the round cards. I also like that this shuffles nicely, which we all love, don't we? So here's the Ace of Cups. Well, here's the Six of Swords moving that way. The Ace of Cups moving this way. So we can say there's a little bit of a clash there. And then the Seven of Cups upright. So the Six of Swords traditionally has that moving on quality. This deck is a little more pippish than Rider-Waite-Smith, and so I would say the Six of Swords I would probably read numerologically, which is like beautiful thoughts, and a really balanced mind. It's like 3 + 3 is 6, so you have growth upon growth, so a really evolved way of thinking and communicating about things, clashing with a restricted or underdeveloped emotional response system. And with the Seven of Cups, you really need to go inside and think about what you're really feeling, because while your mind is expanding, your emotions are really restricted. And this is a thing where I kind of seem to like adding additional cards here to explore the last one. It may have to do with your place in the family dynamic. Your place as the innocent one. As the Child of Mirrors, which would be the Page of Pentacles, you're refusing to learn about life. This seems to be sort of a frequent message with these cards, so I don't know, maybe that's something that I need to look at. But I'm doing these very quickly and obviously without a question. So that is the New Earth Tarot and Guidebook by Kate Silver and Charlene DeLong. The Guidebook is by Kate Silver. It is available through the publisher, the artist's website is where I think I found this. I'll put a link in the description. It's not inexpensive, and I don't love the packaging for the deck. There is a different edition you can get that does not have the guidebook, which, to be honest with you, if you're a reader already and you're fairly good at interpreting card images, or you have a numerological system of your own, you probably don't need the guidebook. I got the guidebook because I like to know when I'm going to share a deck what the artist has to say and what the creator has to say, and also just to, give you a recommendation on whether or not I would use it and when. The thing that I do like about it, as I said, is that it does describe the card images, and so you have a sense of why they did what they did. So there you have it. That's the New Earth Tarot Deck and Handbook by Kate Silver and Charlene DeLong. Hope you enjoyed.